We can do this on Google Meet, Christina.
Yeah,
Nothing for the future.
let's cancel Zoom and let's go to Google Meet right now.
It would be nice to have this feature, you know.
Maybe the next one, if we have Christina again, we'll do it on Google Meet.
You don't have to.
We will not insult you further much by using Zoom, Christina. Okay, amazing. So, yeah, tell me, Stefano. All right, so we're at 35 people. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. We're very happy to have you here in this very first collaborative webinar between Jobs for Lebanon and IE University. The aim of this webinar is to raise awareness through several quantitative webinars like this one on important current topics to educate and guide our audience in Lebanon and abroad. So in this first webinar, we will tackle the topic of business analytics and big data and its role in the modern world, what it means to be an analyst, what are the challenges of the role, and what are the opportunities in the current job market. I would like to welcome our speakers, Christina, Shara, and Stefano. Thank you for joining us today. And we will have a 60-minute presentation or question and answer in the form of a conversation between us. So you can give us your insights and your explanations on the topic and your personal experience. And the last 15 minutes will be for questions and answers. So for all the participants in the room, please, if you have any question, just write it in the chat to me. My name is Albert Sahnawi. You will see me in the chat. And I'm very happy to be your host today. So as I said, our goal is to educate our audience in Lebanon and abroad, because we're doing this through Campus Lebanon, a daughter organization of Jobs for Lebanon. The aim is to help our audience to find a job, to be more educated, and to understand better the market. And this is why business analytics was the very first topic that we chose, since it is a very important field or role, if I can say, and it's new in the modern world. And as the title say it, no matter who you are, you're an analyst, because every one of us process data on a daily basis with micro decisions from the moment you wake up until you go back to bed. And any company in any industry today, the most valuable commodity is data, especially big companies such as Google. And we have today with us a Google analyst, Christina, who is also an adjunct professor at IE University, so merging both institutions. And so my first question will go to her. How and when did you know you wanted to become an analytical consultant, Christina?
Yeah, and first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me on, and welcome to everybody that is connected. So about your question, when did I know I wanted to become an analytical consultant? Well, I knew, first of all, that I wanted to work originally in statistics. So when I studied my bachelor's, I had a focus on statistics, and I wanted to find a career within that world, but I didn't know what exactly it was going to be. And at the time, you know, data science and analytics wasn't so popular. It's become much more popular today, and it was like an easy journey for me coming from statistics. And then after I completed my master's at IE, I did the Master in Business Analytics and Big Data. I was really open to different roles. So as long as I was using data to drive decisions, that's where I wanted to be. And I started out actually as a data engineer. I worked at SAS, the software company, and then Nielsen, which is then a market research company. And finally, I made the move into being an analytical consultant at Google. So for me, it was just, you know, one thing led to the next. And as well, it's really an ideal role because it combines technical skills with business skills. And ultimately, that's what I wanted to do.
Very interesting. So you mentioned that you wanted to use data to take better decisions. And in order to take these decisions, you need to really visualize the data, cluster it, organize it in a more easy way to understand. So in order to process all these steps, how much practical coding did you learn along the way?
Yeah, I would say that I did some coding in my bachelor's, but that was in SAS. So that's a whole different, world of coding. And then I wasn't exposed to the recent tools like R and Python until I did my master's at IE.
Right.
And for that, there was a lot of self-learning before the master's. I studied R and Python on my own. Then I kind of perfected it during the master's. And finally, after the master's is when I got my first practical industry experience with coding. And since the master's, I've pretty much been scripting or coding daily in all of my jobs.
Interesting, interesting. Stefano, you're working at Zalando at the moment. Can you explain to us briefly what is your position there and what leads you to this position?
Sure. I would like to also thank you for inviting me to this webinar. Yeah, so for those who are not familiar with Zalando, Zalando is Europe's leading platform for fashion as an e-commerce. So what I do there is I work in logistics algorithms. It's a team that's composed of a bunch of engineering teams, but at the same time, I work in the product team that supports them with business insights and product management, etc. So I mostly work with product managers that works with research engineers. So they develop our algorithms for our warehouse. Between our warehouse, we try to find out how to distribute our stock efficiently to serve the customers. And my role there is, I would say, divided into three categories. I think when I started there back then, I had a lot of ad hoc requests. I call them like root cause analysis. It's tasks normally that gets to me when they trying to find out a bit more like why did something happen, and try to answer this question or this problem by looking at the data and getting some insights. So it's more like short-term tasks, and there's a lot of deep dives and stuff like that. And that's something I did a lot in the beginning of my when I joined Zalando, and then I started developing into building more long-term products. So like dashboards, like scripts that are being used by business stakeholder to get some recommendations by looking at the data, but also like dashboards for those research engineers that want to, let's say, monitor the metrics of their algorithms. They want to understand a bit more, have more visibility on the metrics that they're trying to optimize with the algorithm. So working a lot with MicroStrategy, for instance, a data visualization tool, a bit like Tableau. And then there's the nice part of my job that I really love, which is the research part. It's a part where I get really to apply a lot of statistical tool and methods, and also a bit of machine learning to understand a bit how are variables affected. So how is a certain variable affected by other features? We try to understand a bit the relationship, and that's a lot of research, digging, and having to apply complex models. And that's something I also enjoy a lot in my job. And I think those three categories pretty much sum up my day-to-day job at Zalando.
Interesting. So you really scrub the data and understand what your customers or internal engineers need as easy and facilitating API for their day-to-day actions and transactions, etc. So you must work closely with engineering, as you said. And why did you choose to work in algorithmic product rather than being like a data engineering, let's say?
That's a good question. I think a data engineer is a role that I find pretty technical, and I think something that I like in my current position is, I think, like Christina was saying, having this bridge between the technical side and at the same time the business side. So something that we do a lot is we support engineers with dashboard visibility, product management, but at the same time I have this other side of my job where I'm constantly working with business stakeholders like operations, and I try to support them with data, with insights, with storylines, so that they could make better informed decisions.
Yeah, amazing. I would like to repeat to the participants that if they have any question, please send it to me by chat, because now people are starting to coming in. And we're very happy with our 3 speakers today. We still didn't hear from our cybersecurity analyst, Bshara. Hi, Bshara, how are you?
Hi,
you are the, how can I put that? Our only cybersecurity panelist today, because you're surrounded by data analysts. So we're very happy to have you here. And I was talking to you earlier and I asked you, why did you choose cybersecurity? I would really like our participant to hear that.
Perfect. Thank you, Albert. Thank you for giving us the opportunity. And personally, I feel like at home, because I think data analysts and cybersecurity specialists, we should work together in order to protect, because the most valuable thing that even we're talking, and I think that's the main objective of the webinar, is data. And and we will talk about it in a couple of minutes. So why did I choose cybersecurity? To be honest, there was two paths within my choice. The first one, I have a BA in computer science and information technology. So basically, they always tell you like, hey, you're into cybersecurity, you're into technology, you're into these kind of things, computer guy. And back in the days, even when I started, I had some experiences with cybersecurity, even the early age, I would say, and some certifications from Lebanon. So this was, let's say, part of my choice. And the second, and I think that's important as well for our audience, especially that the people that are doing a BA or looking for a master and so on, to look for a niche sector. And cybersecurity nowadays, I would say now it's getting more and more needed and exposed. But back in 2018, when I used to say cybersecurity, the people looked at me like, wow, that's something we didn't hear about. Kind of, I would say, when it comes to a master degree. So that was as well, that was for me an important factor. Why did I choose cybersecurity? And for just as an insight, as I was saying previously, based on some studies, specifically Cisco, hopefully in 2 years from now, we will have a non-fulfilled cybersecurity specialist of 4 million, which is a significant number, I think, for everyone. And this works as well in security engineers, data engineers, and so on. These people can have the skills of cybersecurity in order to really integrate themselves within the cyber world.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that the role of cybersecurity specialist is very important, because technically you're protecting the most valuable commodity we have today as analysts and specialists and developer, which is data. What is specifically the actions you undertake to safely protect this data and avoid any leak or hacking or disruption or replacement or stealing?
To be honest, let me start with this. There is, like even Google or any of the big companies in the tech or the cybersecurity industry, we are not the most secured, and we are not 100% secure. That's not the case, because we have bad guys. And the bad guys, and as well, we need to keep in mind that we have the human factor. And we know that humans, they are the weakest link in any of the companies. So you can definitely harness the technology or the computer or everything, but it doesn't make sense for the business. So what we do is basically there's 3 different pillars, I would say. There is the human awareness, which is, I think, for me, basically, it's one of the most valuable, let's say, security measures that we need to do. Teaching people how to react, how to do, what to do, because usually most of the threats comes from the insiders. The second one is basically trying to protect as much as possible the devices and the information of these devices, because nowadays we are moving to IoT, we are moving to the digital world. This has been a huge shift for us as cybersecurity, but as well for you as a data analyst. I think COVID has brought to us an amazing challenge in order to see what to collect, how to collect, and when to collect it. So this information needs to be protected. Moving to the IoT world, we need to protect it. The best way to do so is basically to put a security measure on every single device. And third, and last but not the least, I would say, is the monitoring of this. And as well, data analytics goes inside this, because I think we work closely together in order to understand the behavior, if there is any malicious behavior coming inside this network or this device or this information, to understand. So I think these three categories are important while we are trying to protect our most important commodity, which is data.
Yes. Let me jump back to Christina. And since Christina, you are an analytical consultant at Google, and we know today that Google is one of the biggest data gatherer in the world, since you're tackling users, topics, and you amass, I can't even imagine how much data per minute or per second. At first, if you could explain to us a bit more your responsibilities at Google and how did you demark yourself in a pool of competitive applicants?
Yeah, so at Google, I help I work in, I mean, Google is an advertising company, and I help our advertising clients drive their marketing and their business decisions using data. So I use a combination of first-party and third-party data to do this. And I think the most interesting data that I get to work with is Google search data, because after all, you can understand a lot about users, a lot about local populations, a lot about market trends by what people are searching, how they're searching, when they're searching, etc. So it's a really interesting piece of data to work with, and we have tons of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, talking about your second question, which was how did I demark myself in this competitive pool of applicants? It happens at really all the tech companies that you're going to have a lot of competition if you want to enter in, and you're going to have to find a way to make yourself stand out. Now, in my case, and I don't think it's typical at all, I was recruited by Google via LinkedIn. I was contacted there years ago, and they had an opening in the Madrid office. They had heard about me. They thought my profile would fit, and that's where everything started. So what I did was I worked on building my own brand name, and I found a way to distinguish myself within the world of analytics. And I used LinkedIn as my platform to do that. And I think it really helped bring me to the top of the candidate pool. It helped me stand out. And I think also for everyone listening in that it's a key to build your brand name and be careful. Do not just associate it with your work. Don't let your job define you, but rather build yourself as this well-rounded professional and learn how to sell all the skills that you have.
Very interesting. Christina, apart from your quantitative background and experience, I feel that you as a person also, you have a lot, you work a lot on your qualitative and how can I put it, like your interpersonal skills, your marketing, how you capitalize on the information and not only the image you give, but also how you behave professionally and which soft skills qualities do you think an analyst should have?
I think the most important goes back to communication. Absolutely most important soft skill and just most important skill overall. And when I talk about communication, it encompasses many different things. So one of them is, of course, like communication overall, that you have this skill that you can express yourself well, that you can explain complex topics in an easy to understand manner, and also being able to talk in front of crowds and develop your public speaking skills. So that's, one thing. And then that leads as well into networking, the importance of networking, knowing how to just get yourself exposed in the local community, attend events, get connected with others in the field, and get visibility. And then as well, I would put under communication, it helps with interviews. So if you get really good at your personal skills, you can communicate very well, you're also going to probably do well in interviews. And ultimately, even if you're trying to be a data engineer, an analyst, whatever it is, you're still going to have to pass through interviews. And if you cannot impress them, if you cannot sell yourself in that interview, no matter how good your coding skills are, you're not going to be hired. So it all comes back to communication skills.
Exactly. And today, as you said, Google is amassing large amounts of data. And this data could be very malicious if it's not properly used and treated. So what is your vision for the usage of data in the world in the years to come?
Yeah, if we talk about more the dangerous sides of data, I think Bechara would be better than me at explaining that. But in general, my vision of data is that we obviously should be using it to improve our decision making and our understanding of the world around us. And really, we're only at the beginning of this data revolution. We've just started to collect these massive amounts of data in the last 10, 15 years. So we still have a lot more to go, and we're not using all of the data that we have. Overall, they say that we're using less than 1% of the data that exists today. So there's still a lot of data not going to use. And then this means we're moving away from intuition. So we're making decisions based on data, not based on our personal intuition and experience, which is good. But I also think that we need to keep in mind, we have to be careful that, you know, data analytics, machine learning, it's not magic. You should always apply some common sense to your analysis. I mean, in the end, when we're doing analytics work, we're using historical data to make decisions now and for the future. And you need to mix as well some common sense into that. And just to give a quick example is COVID. So COVID hit and it threw a lot of data models just completely out of whack. COVID was this unpredictable event. It was a black swan. And, you know, data models weren't prepared for it. At that moment, humans had to step in and provide their own common sense and their own knowledge of what was going on in the world to kind of adjust those models.
Yes. So you mentioned the black swan event. There's also a black swan event is an event that has very little probability of happening, but a huge impact. And there's also this amazing book called Black Swan by fellow Lebanese Nassim Nicolas Taleb. I don't know if you already read it.
I was referencing that book. Exactly.
It's an amazing book. So to continue with Bshara, we discussed right now with Christina the vision of data usage and the ethical usage, but how you as a cybersecurity specialist would you fight the unethical usage of data?
I think if I go a step behind, I think we are in a dilemma when it comes to data between the privacy and security. And this is a challenging side because even as a cybersecurity specialist, I always try to think like, is this part of the privacy or part of the security? How do we fight the unethical? I think there is two ways to fight it. And as cybersecurity specialist, we think that this is the best way of doing it. But basically, it's by awareness. I said it twice because really awareness is a crucial part. And the second one is by legislation. I think you all know about GDPR, which is one of the best legislation of data protection laws. I know that data analysts usually in general, they don't like the GDPR. It fights, I can see Stefano smiling, but I think that's important because without data protection laws, I think everyone would abuse the information. And putting these, yes, Stefano, please.
No, nothing. I was saying I can only say
I was about to say, I wanted to ask you on this topic. What do you think are the biggest threats in data usage? How can people misuse and not misuse and use the data in the wrong ways?
I think we need to keep in mind that everything that is private, used publicly, is a misuse. If we start from this path, it's easy for us to understand when a compromised information, and we say why it's compromised. Why we ask always the lawyers within GDPR, why cannot use it? It's just public information. I agree, it's public information, but this information didn't give you the consent to use it. And giving the consent means that I'm allowing you to use my private information for your own usage. And unfortunately, no one reads as well the laws or the agreements. For example, I can give us a really small example, but with regard to this, if we read the agreement of Instagram, for example, there is a lot of information or there is a lot of things that I do not agree with it. Why do you need to take A, B, and C from me where you don't use it for that? And unfortunately, we don't read our agreements. So I would say, going back to the question, not to go far behind it, is basically just giving people awareness. I was reading today, based on Statistica, people are getting aware of their privacy. I think this is important nowadays because it helps data analysts to identify what they can get. That's one. And the second one is legislations, which GDPR is getting a base for most of the legislation all over the world. Like I'm dealing with companies in APAC or in Middle East. they are implementing nowadays the GDPR as base for the data protection laws.
Amazing. I'm going to jump back to Stefano. We didn't hear from you in a while, Stefano. We know that all companies, no matter the industry, require analysts today. And there are several roles as an analyst. How will you know which data position is the right for you? Because today it's so diversified. You have 1,000 different type of analytical positions. We would like to hear more about it.
Okay, I think in order for you to understand what role is the right one for you, you need to also understand a bit what's in the market in terms of data roles. And I think I'm going to highlight high-level data roles that most tech companies have, and a bit like their persona in terms of responsibilities without going too much into the details. I think from what I know so far, we have 4 more or less data roles: the data engineer, the data scientist, the data analyst, and then the business analyst. Okay, and I think each of those roles has their own persona, their own character, their own background. And I think to start off, the data engineer is probably the most technical one. He's the one that's mostly in the back end, developing data infrastructure in order to, feed data into for analysts and data scientists in order to ingest it. He needs to maintain systems so that, if you have a bunch of analysts querying at the same time, that the system doesn't crash. So he's really a lot into, system maintenance. He has a large stack normally of programming languages. So he's not only confined to, let's say, Python or R, but, knows a bit of Java and other programming languages. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell as a data engineer. Now, if we jump more to a data scientist, I think that's where you get closer to the business side. The data scientist, he is technical, yes, but he also needs to have a bit more of a business sense. Why? Because he's tackling at the end problems that are supporting the growth of the business. He is using statistics and machine learning in order to solve those problems. He's a great data analyst. He needs to know how to code with the most common language for data science, R and Python. He's a great SQL master in order to communicate with databases. And he solves problem by forecasting, by recommending, by clustering. That's a bit, sort of like a nutshell, the profile of a data scientist. And then the data analyst, I see him a bit like a mini data scientist in a way, right? He has a similar stack as a data scientist. I would say a big difference between those two roles is that he doesn't have the algorithmic part included. So he does ingest a lot of data. He does process the data and cleans it the same way as a data scientist. He does a lot of data exploration. And he has a particular skill to derive information and insights from this data, because data at the end is only numbers, right? And we need the soft skills that Christina was talking about in order to make a story out of it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And talking about soft skills, it brings me to my next question. As you said, data is only number. It's very quantitative, but at the end of the day, these numbers, they represent people, they represent movements, they represent behaviors. How would you say we can mitigate the quantitative and empirical aspects of these data and number and put forward more the human and ethical side?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would start by seconding what Christina has mentioned in terms of intuition. I think that back then we were in an age where a lot of decisions in the business were taken out of intuition, out of industry expertise. And now, since we're starting to collect data more and more, those decisions are being more and more data driven, right? And that's why, the whole data science hype has started. A lot of companies are recruiting more and more data analysts. It's because, we need to start making sense of the data that we're monitoring, right? Now, this data will always require a human side. So the analyst himself, when he's doing his analysis, he will always put his own interpretation and his own context into the data he's analyzing in order to, form a story at the end. So in a way, I think it's starting to become a balance between quantitative data, but at the same time, pushing still the human side that we've seen in the past.
Yes. So for many years now, as in education, MBAs and masters in management were always the reference. And this question applies for the three of you, Christina, Stefano, and Shara. Do you think that today it is essential to have a master in business analytics and big data, since data and coding will be maybe required languages as qualifications for future job interviews? So I will start with Christina. So how essential do you think it is to have, no matter your background, no matter your education, how essential it is to have coding languages, experience, and data knowledge?
I don't think the master's is absolutely essential for everybody, because I don't think everybody is cut out for it either. But everybody has to realize that there's so much opportunity in this field, and not just in this field, but cybersecurity, like was mentioned before. If you can succeed in it, then you're going to find success. Whereas, you go to more traditional jobs, traditional programs, and maybe you're a little bit more at risk. But having said that, I do always, because I teach at IE and I teach in the MBA programs, and I always recommend to my students, even the ones that come from business or law, marketing, whatever it is, I recommend that they learn coding, even if it's just the basics, but they just try it once, learn a bit of the basics so they can at least understand what it means to code. Because at some point in their life, yes, they're going to be working with data. They're going to come across a team that's working with data, and it will help them understand, what this analytical or engineering team is doing, if they've at least been exposed to some coding, maybe statistics beforehand. So maybe not an entire master's, but I don't care what background you come from, you should get some of the basics, and it's going to help you later on down the road.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. Shara, you're the only one here who did a master in cybersecurity, and we're very happy to have you. So how much coding experience as a cybersecurity specialist do you have? And do you think it is essential, because having you here also shows the diversification and how coding is used by different fields and different backgrounds?
I think the question, we can divide it into three parts. The first part, I think, as Christina was mentioning, is a master essential? I think it depends on your background, depends on your path, the goal that you have in your life. That's where a specialization comes into. And the modern masters, I would say, the one that IE is building for us, basically it's a mix between technical and non-technical courses, which build for you at least a base to start pushing. To be honest, back in the days, I was a teacher, so I had the possibility to be having a 2 years teaching experience with high school students. And I was teaching for the first time in Lebanon within this school coding. And during my BA, I had as well the opportunity to be, for 2 years, I've been doing computer science. So I'm used to C#, Python, and these kind of languages. For me, the coding part is a way of thinking. So the algorithm in general supports everyone in order to think and to solve problems, because it's not about being able to program, but basically it's being able to find a solution, either for someone by just coding, or being able to find a solution in normal life. So I personally believe that, yes, algorithm programming and coding are fundamental for everyone to learn. Having this possibility will help you and support you in front of the people. I think Christina was mentioning as well, when you are in an interview, there is things that are, as well, you're mentioning, quantitative and qualitative. I think programming, beside that, it's a quantitative, let's say, in the quantitative category, but I believe that it's on the qualitative part, because the interviewer will be able to identify the way you're thinking. And for me, that's important. So I believe and I support at least having minimum information is important.
Amazing. And Stefano, just like me and Christina, you did your master in business analytics and big data at IE. We come from 3 different years of graduation, and the master itself has changed and evolved, and the classes that are given there are being more and more specific and are moving quickly, as fast as the field of business analytics today in the world. So if you could tell us a bit more about your master experience, not specifically at IE University, but the essential skills that you acquired out of it, and what do you think is essential to learn nowadays, no matter your background?
Yeah. The choice that I made to do this master was actually because I did my bachelor in business administration at the American University of Beirut. And later on, I realized that actually I wanted to work in a more technical field. Okay. And I thought back then I started reading and I saw that, data science was a big hype back then. And I thought, and it still is, of course, and I thought, okay, I do want to be part of that. And back then, I had this master that was so new. I think it was only 2 years old. And my goal at the end was to really do a career switch, to do something completely more technical that involves, programming on a day-to-day, that involves, I knew it was the right path to take, because like Christina and Shara was saying, programming is essential. Now, does it require a full master to take? No, maybe if you want to do a complete career switch, it might help you, yes, but it's definitely not essential. Of course, this would depend on your goal at the end, on your career goals. For me, I think it has helped me a lot. It has taught me programming languages like R and Python, which are crucial to work in tech companies as a data analyst, as a data scientist. And on top of that, it's like Shara was saying, programming is also a lot about the way you think. It teaches you a logic that's also very practical, not only for programming in general, but also for problem solving. I also realize the more I code, the more I tackle problems in a more organized and efficient way. And that's why I think that programming could help a lot. Whether you're in the tech field or not in the tech field, I think programming will still give you an edge. And for that, you can learn programming on the web. I think it's probably the most available courses, resource online. You have a plethora of courses for data analysis, for data science on the web. And I think I would definitely encourage that.
And what do you say are the most useful programming languages that you can learn on the web? Or can they be self-taught?
Yes, I think they can be self-taught. So something that I did in my master was, since it was only a year, I thought maybe it was not enough. So I started looking into online classes on websites like Udacity, DataCamp. There's a bunch of websites that allow you to start programming from scratch, from nothing. And you can also choose what you want to be. You can be like a web developer, you can be a data analyst, you can be a data scientist, you can even go into data engineering. And you have all sorts of courses that are for free and not for free, whatever you want. And I definitely think that as a programming language, Python is probably the most universal one, because it allows you to do all sorts of things, whether it's data analysis or web development or app development. And learning Python is also learning this logic. And since it's the most commonly used language for data science and those other fields, it also means that you have a lot of support online. This is also something to mention that's very important. So when you have problems, you have bugs, and you need help, the community on Python and R actually is huge. And this is also a big plus for those languages. And also, one thing to add is, if you want to be an analyst, you definitely have to know how to use SQL. Even though it's not a programming language, it's a querying language, but it's a must if you want to extract your data, right, to start analyzing it.
Maybe you can tell us more about SQL for our viewers. And please, to all our participants, questions are starting to come in. So start sending them, and when the hour is down, we will start answering the questions.
SQL in a nutshell is the language you use to communicate with databases. Probably 99% of companies nowadays have databases, right? And SQL is the way of communicating to those databases in order to extract your data. And that's mean that any analyst, any data engineer, almost anyone in the company requires it, whether it's now as an analyst or later on. In my job, for instance, I get a lot of business stakeholders who ask me, "Oh, hey, can you extract me this data? I know that you know those databases, you know the tables. Please extract this data." It's a language that's very easy to learn. It's very similar to English, and wouldn't take a lot of time to be good at it, especially if you know the basics, and would give you a huge edge when it comes to extracting data, pre-processing of data. So I would definitely recommend to have a look at SQL.
So Stefano is recommending SQL for sure, and Christina adds to that with Python for everybody on Coursera. There's also a field or a tool that a business analyst needs to really understand, which is a machine learning, which is the capabilities of an artificial intelligence to learn and adapt without human interaction. Christina, you teach machine learning at IE. If you could give us a bit more insight and explanation about machine learning and how important it is to understand it.
Yeah, I teach machine learning in the MBA programs. So I don't teach the technical side of it, which would be taught more in, the Master in Business Analytics and Big Data or Computer Science. So I give them more of a taste of machine learning, but from a business perspective. And for those that don't know, machine learning, it's pretty much giving computers the ability to learn and to recognize patterns, to predict the future, but without explicit programming. So we've moved away from this rules-based approach of the past, where we used to tell the computer step by step everything it should do. And nowadays we use machine learning, which is kind of the opposite, where we give the computer the data and we let the computer find patterns within the data, learn to distinguish pictures one from another, but to find its own patterns and make its own assumptions, and then give us the output. And really, it comes down to statistics, though. A lot of it is statistics, probability. People that don't work in it, they almost think it's like magic. But in the end, it comes down to statistics, probability, mathematics, and it's becoming more and more powerful, more valuable nowadays, just because we have so much data.
Thank you. Interesting. You were talking about automation, and I think that this automation also applies to the cybersecurity field, because you use machine learning in order to program a computer to detect fraud and risks automatically without your presence. And whenever this threat is detected, Bishara, what are the actions you undertake?
Yes, absolutely, Albert. We use machine learning nowadays, and we are trying to rely on, but always in cybersecurity, we have the human interaction. We keep on top of the machine learning, artificial intelligence, humans, because we think that the best way to fight a bad guy is basically to think like a bad guy. And you cannot teach the computer to think like a bad guy. How do we fight is basically once we find any malicious activity within our network is depends. Every single company has its own way to recover. Some of the companies, for example, if they are attacked, they would stop, disconnect, and then do their job and try to go back to business. And some others will have their strategy based on moving, what we name as redundancy. So if there is any case where the attacker is targeting one of my assets, I just turn off this asset, work on it in order to support, and then turn on the second one, which is clean. But this goes as well to the investments. This goes for the ability of the company. Just to keep in mind that internet in general hasn't been built with the idea of security, neither with the idea of data. So unfortunately, not having this, so you need to put a layer of security. You need to put a layer of human interactions on top of the data that is gathered without having a security and design model. So I think the way to do it is basically just depends on every single company.
Yeah, Shara, you're working as a cybersecurity key account manager at Telefonica, and you are from Lebanese nationality, as most of us here. And we know that today, with the hardship our country is going through, we will struggle even more and more to find opportunities out there. So you're kind of a beacon in the darkness. So how did you find this position at Telefonica with only a Lebanese passport? And what is your recommendation? What are the tips you can give to fellow Lebanese who are struggling also to find a job abroad?
Thank you, Albert, for the question. I named it the message of hope, to be honest, because definitely I'm working now. I'm heading the cybersecurity. I'm responsible of cybersecurity services outside of Telefónica's footprint. To the people that don't know Telefónica, Telefónica is one of the top 10 telco companies around the world. And one of the companies or subsidiaries that we have is related to cybersecurity. And we are present in more than 20 countries. So my responsibilities are to lead cybersecurity within APAC and EMEA region, talking to executives. How I was able to reach there, basically, it's because of my soft skills and my network. That's something we were discussing it as well before the webinar. And that's important message for my Lebanese, my home people, is basically don't look always for the hard skills, look for the soft skills. That's an important value that unfortunately our educational system doesn't teach us how to do it and how to push forward when it comes to communications and so on. So basically I left the country with the aim, when I reached IE, with the aim to stay outside of the country. As most of us, when we leave the country, we say we want to be outside. We want to. And the first message that I got, it was maybe the first or the second week when I was in Madrid, people said to me, without a passport, forget about it. I was like, okay, challenge accepted. I have 10 months to try to push in order to get something. And I can assure you, I got more than 200 rejections while I was applying for jobs through referrals, without a referrer. And the main, the key answer was, we're not ready to sponsor. But I think the idea was, I was trying to find things that I loved and I wanted to do at the beginning without assessing my skills and where does they fit within the company. So we need to keep in mind that why the company needs to hire you. That's the question. You are the best analyst, perfect, but they will definitely have someone within the country. So you need to think in a way to push your skills, show the skills that you need or the company needs in order to hire you. So what I did is basically, and that's, I had the opportunity with Telefónica, I had an opportunity in UAE, I had an opportunity in London. It was the last months of my university, just because I figured out that the company requires skills like speaking. I think Christina was mentioning public speaking, and the brand, as well as my entrepreneurship skills. This is something that companies looks for nowadays, as well as the language, which is the Arabic language, because I deal with Middle East. So having Arabic is an advantage. And last but not least, I think within the cybersecurity world and within the digital world nowadays, the mindset is different. Why? Because we have the problem with the product team. Sorry, Stefano, for that, but we have a problem with the product team for a reason. They really speak from a technical perspective. What companies are looking for is someone who's able to understand technical, but at the same time, as Christina said, transmit it, and Stefano has said as well, transmit it to the business people to understand the language is simplified. So I think these skills were key for me in order to get on top of candidates, since Telefónica and my position isn't a low one, it's a senior position. So this was key for my manager and for all my interviews to see in me and wait for me 6 months to join the company while they were in need for someone. And I think that's to just conclude it in one single word. Persistence is key for everyone to succeed and to reach his goals. A message of hope. As Lebanese, we are super ready to support, I think, all over the world. So just change is needed, and we can do it for ourselves.
Thank you, Bshara. Very inspiring. And we're starting to close on the time. We're very happy to host the three of you here today. Very honored by your qualifications and the insight you were given and the information you're providing for this webinar. At the end of the day, we're doing this for Lebanon in order to give more information and create an economy and rebuild an economy from afar. So my last question today will go to Christina. And what would you give as advice to aspiring young women in the field in order to make it?
Yeah, this is a really good question. I would say women, but diversity in general is very, very important in the tech world. And more companies are starting to realize this, but it's taking time. But specifically, I would say for young, inspiring women, the first thing is to build confidence. So don't let it intimidate you. For example, if you walk into a meeting and you are the only woman, it's happened to me plenty of times, especially working in more technical roles. It will happen to you. But don't let that intimidate you as well. You need to learn to manage imposter syndrome. We all get that. I have it all the time, but you have to learn to set it aside. And then as well, for a woman, I would recommend find female role models that you can follow. And maybe even if you can, like a personal mentor to guide you, preferably a female, just because they've been through it before as a woman in the field. But having these people to look up to can help you. And like Betshara was mentioning before about speaking Arabic. So as a woman or whatever background you come from, having diversity in a company is very, very important. So Bechara found this niche. He speaks Arabic. Where can he use that skill to his advantage in Spain? And it's the same for me. I'm not Spanish and I work in Spain, but I also used my skills of English and public speaking in English and sold that very, very much, pushed it, and it helped me get a job here as well. So no matter where you come from, what background you come from, find as well where your niches are, what diversity you can bring to a team. And I think that's one thing that from Lebanon you can bring. You have Arabic, and the Middle East market is so big, and there's companies now are global, and they need to be able to communicate with different regions of the world. So I just wanted to add that on as well. I know it's a little bit off topic from women, but as well, it's important in every way, diversity.
Amazing. Please, I repeat myself. If anyone has questions for our speaker, send them to me privately in the chat and not publicly, and I will transmit them. So we're having lots of questions coming in. Maybe we'll be ahead of time and start taking them. The first one is from Christina Monroy to you, Christina, and it is the following: how would you recommend getting a start in coding and data interpretation?
Getting a start. So at the beginning, you can do like I did. I mean, I did a lot of self-learning before I did my IE masters. So I found courses online. I mentioned it earlier in the chat, the Python for Everybody specialization. I love that. There's an amazing professor in that course. So I highly suggest that one. But do your research and find a couple of courses, decide what languages you want to learn, and start from there with some self-learning. Make sure that you enjoy it. If you're going to do this, make sure you enjoy it. And from there, you can decide if you want to do something more established. So a master's or a boot camp. But start with the self-learning to make sure you're on the right journey. And from there, build it up.
Thank you, Christina. I'm going to take another question for Stefano. Is it challenging to keep up with the programming updates and trends in the market? And is it a one-off study, or do you continue to feed the mind? Quote, and how frequently? Like, if I can rephrase this question, is how often do you learn new skills and regenerate them?
I think that's an amazing question, because it is sort of challenging. Now, it's not as fast paced as you would imagine, meaning it's not like, I don't know, in 1 year I would look at the libraries I'm using, the stack I'm using, and I would see, oh wow, it's completely deprecated. No, not that much, but you definitely need to stay on top of your game all the time. And I was telling you, in the part of my responsibility in my job was this research part, right? And that's a part where I really get to sort of update a bit what's in the market. What are what's the trend? Basically, where is the trend going? And try to always, use those new built libraries, those new built functions, because what they help, at the end, they will help you become a better cybersecurity analyst, a better data analyst. So yes, in a way, they're very beneficial. Now, you should not really spend every day some time looking at it, but for sure, you should always have a look on what's going on in the market.
Amazing. Thank you, Stefano. And another question from Seri H. I hope I'm pronouncing well your name. What are the best advice you can give for undergraduates who want to pursue management consulting, and how much business analytics and programming do you have and you get in management consulting?
Who should answer that?
Oh, sorry, Stefano. Yes,
Okay.
I forgot.
Could you repeat please the question?
Yes. What is the best advice you can give for undergraduates who want to pursue management consulting? And how much business analytics is there in management consulting?
Okay, I think for management consulting, probably the data role that fits them the best is probably the business analyst role. And I think the business analyst is someone who probably is not required to program as a requirement in his role, but definitely I think a competitive edge would be to use data visualization tools, to be good at them, because this is what gives you like this data analyst feel, but at the same time, you could get insights as good as what a data analyst gets from his Python skills,
Yeah.
So definitely focus on data visualization tools. They're your added value as a business analyst, of course.
So to sum up what we said previously in 2-3 sentences, the difference between a data engineer, a data analyst, and a business analyst. So the data engineer will take the very raw data or even create programming algorithm to generate larger amounts of data and more insightful data, and reorganize it, then pass it on, let's say, to the data analyst, who will cluster, organize, clean them, and visualize it in a better way. Then the business analyst will read this data in order to have the business approach and know what to produce and increase profit, revenue, no matter the field, no matter the industry. This modern role, this modern technologies, these modern positions are touching any type of industry, any field. You shouldn't feel limited. You can use these skills in any type of industry. So now to move forward, I'm going to take a question from Dora Jaber to Bshara, and it is the following. Are you monitoring using real-time processes for fraud prevention in telecom mostly?
Yes. Basically, this is crucial for us, because on a real-time basis is the way that you can prevent. And we always say in cybersecurity, never be reactive but proactive. So you need to prevent and be proactive. So yes, we do it on a constant monitor. And if I may add something out of this, adding from what Stefano and Christina has mentioned. For me, you need to know basically what you're capable of. Definitely, we like different jobs, but see what are the most value you can bring, as Christina was mentioning, to the company. And sometimes, if you do this self-reflection, you're able to understand your soft skills to be able to push it forward in data, in management, in cybersecurity. And nowadays, I would say in cybersecurity, just to give some tips, it's getting into a specialization. So basically, if you don't have a technical background, you're not going to be competitive. And data, it's going to be, I think, the same, or it's already the same. But that doesn't mean that you cannot learn this language. You just need to learn it and start to push yourself from a junior to senior to management and so on. So that will be just a path for you.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to Christina. I'm also taking a question from Christina Monroy. It's purely by luck, guys. It's not on purpose. So, do companies have data ethics, and is that field growing?
Yes, I do think companies are taking it more and more seriously. At the same time, it's very new. So, and I don't work in this, to be honest. I don't work in data ethics. You have teams that are specifically dedicated to that. And they would be responsible for then educating, analysts, data scientists, data engineers, if there are things that we need to keep our eyes on, red flags, etc. So yes, it's happening. Companies realize that it's becoming more and more important, especially now that we have algorithms controlling more and more of our lives. I mean, everything around us is run by algorithms. We need to be taking into account things like ethics, bias, discrimination, etc. And just to add on, I would recommend everybody on the call, there's a book about this that's amazing. It's called Weapons of Math Destruction. It speaks specifically about data ethics and about like the dangers in having so many algorithms making decisions for us. So check that out, Weapons of Math Destruction. exactly like math, but without the S. But yeah, exactly like that. Chat.
Apologies.
No, no problem.
There was a nice comment from Dora. I'm trying to finding it. Yes. So Dora Jabber is asking if we can create machine learning algorithms for the Lebanese government to tackle and prevent corruption. So in that case, we are, I think, merging cybersecurity with machine learning, because we need to protect ourselves from our government. And if we do, the case is that it won't stop alerting us. Fraud, 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 fraud all the time. So do you think it's possible to do that, Shadow?
To be honest, I've been involved with the cybersecurity data protection laws of Lebanon, and I would say it's definitely possible when there is a will. The problem is that sometimes there is no will, or it takes a lot of time where the things are getting a bit obsolete. So for example, last year, we were discussing this through a webinar with some fellow cybersecurity specialists in Lebanon. And the person that was talking about data protection laws was referring to the first version of GDPR, which nowadays is obsolete. So I would answer that there is definitely a solution for everything in life. When the person has the will, and when our Lebanese leaders, if we can name them leaders, they have the will to push against corruption, against security, against data protection, against all of this.
Thank you. Hania is asking a question to Stefano. So Stefano, you mentioned tools that can help beginners learn how to extract data. Do you recommend any website in particular?
Yes, I have a bunch of websites. I've done online learnings from probably all of them. I think my top picks so far would probably be so Code Academy. I can write it in the chat. So
yeah,
Code
please
Academy.
do.
We have Data Camp. We have Udacity. Udacity is amazing. They have free classes that are taught by industry experts. We have, I don't know, Christina, back me up if you know, Udemy also is a great resource. All those websites offer free classes, also paid classes. It depends really on your level. Usually the intro classes are for free, and in most fields, whether it's programming in Python in general, whether it's programming for Python in data analysis, whether it's just SQL. And also, if you are, let's say, a good student, let's say, in data analysis, and you want to practice, you have a website called Kaggle that was acquired by Google,
yes,
where you can really practice your skills as a data scientist. You know, you have data science competition where you get to, you know, meet with other people, form a team, and then just solve problems that are out there from companies,
yes,
which is an amazing opportunity, which
yes,
I have done it as well. And also adds great value to your CV. When you come and talk about those competitions that you proactively have taken, it's really a game changer in your interview.
Yes. Allow me to add to this, Stefano. You have also GitHub, which is an amazing platform to interact with fellow coders, programmers, machine learners around the world, and you can solve issues. And GitHub can be of your portfolio platform for all your projects and your codes.
That's correct.
And Albert, if I might add something for data analysts, because maybe if they are not specialists in the data, or they are not coming from a technical background, I think it's important to have a first level on algorithm, the way to understand and think, then moving into the Python and so on. If they are not into the tech field, if they are into the tech field, then maybe learning a language is definitely a solution.
Nice. So the next question from Hani Farshour, it's for you, Bshara. Is it possible to have a startup business in cybersecurity in Lebanon, and with the current infrastructure?
Absolutely. I think that's all over the world. When it comes to startups, once you have an idea and you're able to get all the support needed, and I think in Lebanon we are doing great efforts and all over the world in order to push into supporting startups. Yes, I would say if you have the idea, just make sure that you see the competition. You look for something innovative. We were discussing with Christina before joining this webinar regarding VirusTotal, for example. VirusTotal has started from a startup. It was an idea in the south of Spain, and it got acquired now by Alphabet and Google. So yes, I do recommend, and I'm sure that we can do it.
Impressive. If you could please write in the chat the name of the startup that was funded that you just mentioned.
Yes.
The next question is by Joy. It's for you, Christina. Is it possible to find opportunities for women in STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, to pursue data science, whether it is scholarships or free courses, especially due to the economic crisis in Lebanon?
Of course. So I think that now that especially companies have realized the importance of increasing diversity and especially gender diversity and women in tech, you can find a lot of scholarships. So I can speak specifically from IE. IE has a lot of women scholarships specifically, and women in STEM scholarships. And I know that happens as well at other universities around the world, but you can find lots of opportunities. You can take advantage of the fact that you are a woman, and you can apply to these types of things.
There is another question that says, is there a Lebanese-led initiative helping Lebanese students who are looking to do a master in business analytics at IE to finance their master? And I would allow this question to say that IE University praised a lot its Lebanese community, which for many years was the third largest community in IE, and they really value our input because they know that we have great entrepreneurial skills, and we are really active on campus and outside of campus, and we have a very strong network. So yes, if you reach out personally and individually to the human resources department or student services, they will work the cases case by case. And I can speak on behalf of the Lebanese chapter, which is the official Lebanese club at IE, that we've been working closely with student services in order to help as much as we can the future generation of Lebanese students at IE, because we know that they are of great value. And we also met with President Iniguez, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, last week, and he showed his support to the Lebanese community. So keep on applying at IE and write to them case by case, and I think they will help you. Otherwise, you have other great Lebanese Foundation International, such as LIFE, which is in English, not English, but it is kind of a Lebanese funded NGO, which was formed by several Lebanese businessmen who fund and send scholarships to Lebanese students. Now,
just to add, as a professor, when I start classes, the first thing I do is ask, where is everybody from? And Lebanon is always one of the most represented countries in my class. Amazing.
Yes. I'm sure because we have a very strong presence in MBA and Master in Management mostly.
Yeah.
So we have the next question is from Ajulan Raja Kumaran, and it's for you, Christina. It's how do you think the job market will be for data science in the future? So I think that we answered the question previously by asking you the future of data usage.
Yeah, I think the field continues to grow. There's tons of opportunity, and as well, you can find niches. You might, specialize in natural language processing or machine learning or different things. But at the same time, I realized that more and more people are going towards this field. So a lot of that gap is being closed, but at the same time, I think it's still growing. So I don't know if we're going to still have the type of opportunity that we had when it first exploded, but there's always going to be opportunity. And your skills are very transferable. So people want somebody who can understand and work with data. So it's absolutely one of the best fields to go for.
Thank you, Christina. Shada, we have a question from Zeno. She is a telecom engineer, and she looks to switch into a data analytics career, but she's quite unsure of the deviation. And what advice would you tell her or give her? Would you tell her to stay in the telecom?
The telecom industry, the people that are in the telecom industry, they really find it hard, basically, either to move or to do a shift, because the telecom industry in general is really a hard industry by itself, to bureaucracy, to traditional way of doing business, used for the old business, let's say, model. So yeah, it's a bit hard, but I would definitely recommend to move. As a telecom engineer, I think she has all the skills, either to go to cybersecurity, to data analytics, to any of the digital booming, let's say, opportunities. I would recommend her. Nowadays, cybersecurity is niche. Not to just take a part of the data analytics. I know that we are in a data-driven webinar, but I think nowadays cybersecurity is niche. She can as well move into this opportunity. If not, if she likes data analytics, I would recommend for sure, because Christina was mentioning, and we know it within our fields, specialization and engineering and these kind of things are getting more and more attracted by the human resources within our companies for any of the jobs, I would say.
Thank you, Bishara. Christina, Wafia has a question for you. Since you work with Google Analytics and advertising, is there an ethical part to your job because he is afraid of feeling not consciously at ease if he works in this field, because you are managing tons of data and sometimes it can be unethical to penetrate people's lives so deeply and understand them better than themselves?
Yeah, I don't. So like I said before, I don't work in data ethics, but it's true that we have like regulations that we follow throughout the company. And of course, when you have things like GDPR, you have to comply with that. But even on a more level, a deeper level, we have special things that we have to follow that comes from a, compliance and ethical team. And we're trained on that. And as well, I would say that when we're working with things like Google Analytics data or Google Search, you have to remember that the data is anonymized. So I'm never actually looking at what you are doing, Albert, or what you are doing, Bechara. I'm looking at a large group, a population, and looking at the behavior of that population. But I'm never looking down to the user. I don't even have access to that type of data because user data is very, very protected.
Thank you very much, Christina. We have another question to Bishara from Basil. So in your point of view, what is the best security operations center? And do you think endpoint response is becoming a must?
Endpoint response is becoming a must for sure. The best security operations center, I don't think there is a best. There is a lot of big cybersecurity companies. I wouldn't say my company is the best security operations center, neither Google, because I think all the companies in the cybersecurity fields, the giants, which we named the big four giants in the security or the tech industry, they have really amazing security operations centers, and they have amazing security analysts. But yes, absolutely, the end protections, the EDR is getting more and more essential for our day-to-day business.
Yes, amazing. So guys, we're closing in on time. It's already 6:13. We have until 6:15. As a last intervention, I'm going to give the last 2 minutes to the president of the Lebanese chapter, which is Elias, so he can explain a bit more for people wishing to apply to IE and are a bit skeptical about funding their masters.
Thank you, Albert, and welcome all. Thank you, Christina, Bishara, and Stefano. So yes, as you mentioned, Albert, we, the Lebanese chapter at IE, we are working super closely with the student service, with the HR, and especially with the IE Foundation. And as Albert mentioned, we met the president in Iguez 2 weeks ago, and he gave us the full support for the Lebanese community at IE, because we know that nowadays we're struggling because of the capital control in Lebanon. So the numbers of students applying to IE or to all other universities or business schools all around the world are decreasing, and we don't want the Lebanese community to, because as Albert mentioned, the Lebanese community is one of the pillars of the community at IE. So we are working very closely with the IE Foundation. They are giving special they are showing more interest for the Lebanese applying at IE, giving huge scholarships. They might also create a new scholarship for Lebanon, like because we have the scholarship for women, scholarship for Middle East, scholarship for country in special situation. They might create a scholarship only for Lebanese. So feel free to reach out to Albert or to myself if you're applying to IE. We are working closely with other foundations that are giving an extra scholarship, such as LIFE, such as Association Philippe Jabber. So don't hesitate if you're applying to IE to reach out to us, and we can definitely help you to make it happen. So Albert, thank you, and I'll get back to you so you can close up today.
Thank you very much, Elias. As he said, don't feel shy to apply and reach out to us. I would like to thank from the bottom of my heart one more time our speakers, Christina, Bshara, and Stefano. It was a pleasure hosting you today. This webinar has been recorded. We're going to post it very soon from Jobs for Lebanon YouTube account. It was a pleasure having you all here, and it was very insightful. We will have many more webinars to come in collaboration with IE University on other quantitative topics, because the most important part for us is to build an economy from afar and give as much direction and insight and fill the gaps in terms of knowledge for all Lebanese abroad and residing in Lebanon. And as I said before, thank you again, Christina, Bshara, and Stefano, and have a good evening all. I'm going to end the meeting.
Thank you, Albert.
Thank you.
Thank you, Albert.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good evening. Ciao.
Ciao.